Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Haley. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
You know, just pretty busy, but
Hey, Noel.
text you and say hi, but I'll just.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Morning, Shelley.
Hi.
Morning, Shelly.
Tizzy said she might be a minute or two late, but I see Matt just joined, so that's good.
I can only stay on till 11 also.
Yeah, I put the educators update first. Make sure we got to that. Matt, I'm not sure if you heard, Tizzy is going to be probably a few minutes late. I didn't know if you wanted to get started on the first agenda item or just wait for her to log on.
Is the first agenda item talking about the meeting next week?
Yep.
We probably ought to wait for her for that. So she's going to be running the meeting.
Okay.
You
Sounds
said
good.
she is planning on jumping on?
Yeah, she just said a minute or two, so it should be soon.
Yeah, we probably ought to wait.
Okay, sounds good.
Do we want to jump to the work group exits, work group updates, or do you want to wait for her as well?
Why don't we give her a minute or two and
That's fine.
Hey, good morning. Let's see everybody at. Hang on.
Morning.
There you are. Which might be you here.
Morning.
There it is. Cool. We got a good full house this morning. All right, so let's get right into it, I think. Wow, hi, Dawn, that's quite the headgear.
It is hat day at school, and if I'm going to do it, I'm doing it.
Nice.
So
I
It's kind of
know.
heavy actually, so I'll only keep it on for a little bit, but I thought I'd let you all enjoy it for a minute. I
I
love
love it.
feathers.
That you just lightened everything way up. That's great. So of course, as we all know, thanks to the state board rescheduling things and pushing back a week, we also pushed back a week. So gave us an opportunity to have another planning meeting prior to our full body meeting, which I think is fortuitous because I think there are definitely some discussion points that have come up perhaps in preparation for what would have been last night's meeting that I think we'll now have an opportunity to tackle. So basically, we don't have any significant change, I don't think, set for the full body meeting agenda, but it looks like we have a good number of our co-chairs here today. So does anyone have any questions or comments or concerns about that full body meeting agenda that we've sort of drafted over the past month or so of meetings? I'm not sure the agenda itself needs much more discussion, but I didn't want to move past it without any commentary or opportunity for you to comment. And Matt, I see you're unmuted. Did you want to add any thoughts? I'm not asking for you to mute either. I just thought maybe you wanted to
No,
say
I'll mute myself.
Okay. Cool. All right. So I think this gives us an opportunity to check in again with those members of our working groups, those leaders of our working groups that are here, to kind of make sure we're all on the same page in terms of just that path forward or updates that are going to be provided to the general public when we have our meeting next week. Of course, we're going to do a bit of review, as you see in the agenda, just sort of talking about what ended up in the budget. Matt has been our RFP guru, but I've been working with him on that to the extent that I have been able to, just to support getting those out. So it sounds like we might have some particular discussion points around those, because we have been seeing them come out, beginning to get a sense or not of sort of what the response might be. And then of course that's going to inform our responsibilities moving forward as working groups that are going to be reviewing outcomes. So I'm just going to go ahead and go through each work group and give the chairs an opportunity, I guess, to voice anything in terms of what you plan to update or anything that you need clarification on that we can speak to now. I know we've had some email exchanges on a couple of items. So with that, I would welcome Kelly, Noel. I don't know if Mike is here or not. If you wanted to offer anything new from the educators.
I will let Mike and Noel take this one.
Oh, Mike is here. Sorry, I can't see everybody. Oh, he is.
Yeah, I'm happy to start. So we met the other day. I just want to recenter us back into the original problem that we were addressing as far as the, when we started at the very beginning of our meetings, was educator retention of high quality teachers in high needs schools. And after, extenuous research and surveying people, the problem that we addressed, that was shared with us from the DOE, was issues with administration and school climate, and that we had to address that. So we put together recommendations based on addressing the school climate in the school to be able to retain high quality teachers. And then that ended up being the professional learning package that we said we would identify a few different schools that really needed that assistance because they had a high rate of teacher turnover, they had low student outcomes. However, the RFP that I read really was focused on literacy. I'm really disappointed that it doesn't look anything like the recommendation that we gave. I'm not sure how that happened. It looks like it's a bunch of PD for teachers around literacy, which is not the problem that we were focusing on. We actually specifically said that teachers are already over PD'd, and having extra PDs for teachers to do would add to teacher attrition. It would not help us to retain high quality teachers. So I'm just not sure how that happened, and we need to address that because this is not what our recommendation was. And I wonder actually if this is legal for us to take the recommendation that we said and to apply it in this way. I don't really know what the ramifications of that are, but as far as that's concerned, this is not what teachers were brought in to discuss for many, many hours and decide on. So I just need some understanding around that, and we need a solution, because I'm not going to put my name on that as being what I worked on as a recommendation.
Certainly.
And
Okay.
I really do want to know how that was applied that way. The Grow Our Own, I understand they did take a small piece of what we recommended. The problem we were addressing there was around recruiting and retaining and supporting educators in critical shortage areas, which we identified as male, Black, and Brown teachers. And we were talking about, the most immediate successful solution would be being able to support people in the community who are adults, who are already working in schools, who needed a pathway to teacher certification and administrator certification. I mean, I can tell you, even in our school, we have 5 people identified who would be good candidates for that, who could start and be teaching within a few years. The way that this was applied was for teacher academies, which would be recruiting students in middle and high school, Black and Brown male students, to become future teachers, which, again, there's nothing wrong with that, but that was not our main gist of our recommendation, because that has less of a high yield. As far as, like, we don't know if that's going to be successful, how many of those people would become teachers, and it would be a lot further down the line that we would see that. And Tika, I'm sorry, I'm trying to speak louder. I'm not sure if everyone can't hear me, but so I feel like maybe they didn't have enough money to support that Grow Our Own for community members, but I think that, if they don't have enough money, we could partially fund that instead of putting the money into the teacher academies, because that was like last on our list of things to fund, because that, again, I don't really think that has a high yield. We said this over and over again in the meetings. So again, I just don't understand how even this early on, this was taken so far off the path, and how much control we have over this in implementation, because I'm disappointed in that, and I need some explanation around it.
No, I mean, I think, well, it's a good flag at this stage, certainly. And certainly there were many steps from recommendation to sort of, I think the RFP, for example, has to go through a few iterations. So clearly, based on that feedback, something was lost in translation. I think my understanding of the Grow Our Own, was that was, reflective of a portion of where that was. But in terms of the RFP, obviously we generated epilogue language based on the recommendation document. And then when the actual RFPs are crafted on that basis, and Matt can speak better than I can, quite frankly, to some of the technicalities, because he had kind of taken a lot of the lead on working with the department, which I did as well, but really took the brunt of it on working with the department on crafting that. And they did, at one point, I think, sort of take the feedback about the whole school PD in the fashion of Laurel and Seaford, and opted to channel that funding that we designated for that whole school sort of culture shift style professional collaboration through the existing framework that they had that had been utilized in that way. So probably because there's some existing tenets to what that was, I could see perhaps that being a way that it got distorted. However, when it comes to RFPs, I definitely don't think that solutions are impossible. We've had some other conversations about RFPs that we've been dissatisfied with. I'm looking at Chuck and certainly been able to offer that feedback. But Matt, do you want to talk a little bit about that process?
Well, about the professional development?
Sure, that RFP is sort of ending up warped in somewhat of a different direction than we might have expected.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, with the exception of the literacy part, which I can try to shed some light on, I'm not sure that there is that difference between what we sent, what the consortium sent in terms of its recommendation to the legislature and what came out of the legislature and then what ended up in the RFP. And as far as what's in the RFP, that's, you know, the department is bound by what the legislature instructs it to do. So with the professional development, our actual recommendation that we sent out, which everyone looked at and commented on and signed off on before we sent it, with respect to the professional development, was pretty general. It just said whole school professional development with a specific focus on the needs of children, the specific children in the schools that would be targeted at schools that had high percentages of children living in poverty. And that's, the RFP is limited to those schools and contains that specific language that we sent about it being targeted on the specific needs of the children. I don't think it's limited to teachers. I think that it can be, the schools can propose it for staff, for anyone who they want to propose to receive it. So the one difference is the literacy component. And that's something that frankly, again, we're looking at this today with $10 million in the bank, but that's not where it was when it went down to the Joint Finance Committee. We had $0, and we're trying to figure out ways that we could persuade other legislators to support putting money into it. And for two of the members of the Joint Finance Committee, a pretty compellingly important issue to them is that when professional development is done, that it include evidence-based reading instructions. So that was added to try to accommodate their concern, and in my view at least, had something to do with the fact that we actually got funding for it. So that is the one difference between what we actually sent and what ended up in the RFP, and that was again directed by the legislature, but that was something that you can put that one on me if you want, because that was something that we thought was necessary to get funding for it, period. So where it stands now is that those schools that are eligible, which are the schools that have the necessary percentages of kids who are classified as low income, they can put together their own proposals for how they think they could best use the professional development money. Then DOE will review them and decide which ones have the most merit. A lot of that language that's in that RFP is sort of standard DOE language that they use for all RFPs that they do for professional development, and they have the discretion to do that. They're the agency that's actually responsible for overseeing it. So I don't know if that answers the questions or not. As Tizzy said, I don't think any of the consortium's proposals made it all the way through the process of General Assembly and DOE RFP exactly as we would have originally envisioned them. I know that the pre-K did not. I know that the wraparound services did not. And that's, but on the other hand, we got I shouldn't say we, Senator Lockman got us $10 million for something where we had zero. So that was the process. So I don't know if that's a good explanation or not, but that's, I think, how it ended up the way it is.
I guess my concern is that $10 million is going to be applied to something that works in the opposite direction of what we were intending. So my one question is, did Senator Sturgeon, because she is a teacher, did she understand that the problem of practice we were addressing was teacher retention and not literacy when she voiced this, or was this just, redirected to something else?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So the problem of practice we were trying to address with this whole school package was teacher retention, was that a lot of high quality teachers are leaving. Did Senator Sturgeon understand that? And to the people who are educators, did they understand that?
I wouldn't want to speak for her. I mean, I know that she was very involved and listened in on a number of the consortium meetings and the work group meetings. So I think it's fair to assume that she had she was as well informed as any legislator about those types of issues, but I wouldn't want to speak for her. And,
Well,
you know,
and
to
Dr.
your other point, you know, no one needs to apply for this money. And, you know, if there's a concern that this might, you know, be unhelpful, DOE does not have to award the money. I mean, it could be reallocated to some of the consortium's other recommendations. They could put more money into the wraparound services. So if there's some concern that, you know, this might end up being a negative, there's nothing in the budget epilogue that requires that they spend this money. It authorizes them to, but it doesn't require them to.
So yeah, I mean, that's my question is like, if this says literacy on it, how much leeway do we have? I understand what you're saying is that the language was not specific enough, but then why was that not addressed? I mean, I didn't understand that the language was not specific enough and that it could be applied to something else that we didn't attend. So, you know, why was that not addressed before we sent it? And I mean, I think we were very clear about what it was supposed to be for, but at this point, do we have the leeway to actually apply it for the problem of practice of teacher retention because of school climate and, you know, revamping the school climate?
Well, the General Assembly is, you know, it's their word that counts about anything that involves spending money. And they were specific that money that was used for this professional development had to include some component of evidence-based reading. That doesn't mean it has to be the focus of it. But you know, when someone who's going to get that money, so that's, you know, DOE has lots of discretion with RFPs, but it doesn't have the discretion to not include things that the legislature has told it that it has to. But like I said, if there's a concern that that's somehow going to be a negative, I mean, I would hope that schools that didn't think it was going to be helpful just wouldn't apply for it. There's nothing that requires a school to apply for this money. And we may actually have the opposite problem. I was mentioning to someone else on our group that many of the schools have CARES Act funds for the next 2 years that they have already applied to fill up pretty much all of the professional development time that they have allocated for their teachers. So you know, there may be some schools that don't apply for the money because they literally do not have more time to give professional development time for their teachers where they would spend it. That's, I think, going to be one of the challenges when we see the responses to this come in.
Can I give you an example of when this might come into play? So I currently work in a district and in a school that has challenges with retention and obviously the same population. And we're already in 2 literacy projects with the state. So I think the same legislators were hitting multiple angles with their same agenda. And so that money is being placed in other places that are providing the same services. So for instance, in my building where we're already in 2 literacy projects with the state of Delaware, if this is pitched in that way where we do need help with retention, I don't see us looking to even go for it because that is more of our need. And like I said, the state is already putting out multiple projects and coaching, even for administration. I'm in a leadership coaching one. I'm in another one for building. And I can see where Noelle's point that they may take it in a different direction.
And at some point, I think, you know, we need to trust the schools, you know, and the folks who are working at the school level to, you know, to determine what's best for them and their teachers and to act in accordance with that. So I would hope that a school that thought that this was going to be a negative rather than a positive wouldn't apply for it.
How would the school know that it was actually about teacher retention and not literacy when the way it's written looks like it's about literacy? How would they know that they were applying for it because they have a high attrition of teachers and that they were trying to fix that problem?
Well, the standard is not teacher attrition. The standard for who gets to apply for it is the percentage of students who are classified as low income. So that's the metric for who's eligible to apply for it.
I'll
So
just say, perhaps one
Go ahead,
thing
Shelley.
that could, I'm sorry, who's talking?
Go ahead, Shelley. Go ahead.
Okay, I was just gonna say, you know, when it comes to these RFPs, you know, the way that it's put out there and the way that rubrics are developed don't allow necessarily for that flexibility for a school. And so to Noelle's point, if we looked at the data and noticed that climate is an issue with teacher retention, and that was where the recommendation came from, what we'll need to have is flexibility that's built into that RFP that brings that to the forefront and invites schools to say, we have an issue here and here's an RFP that can help us with it. I'm wondering if one of the solutions is that many times an RFP isn't written with a single track agenda. Maybe to get this back on track to the teacher work group's recommendation, DOE can write this RFP in a way that allows for a school to have multiple tracks so that this bucket of money is divided up and X portion is dedicated for this, and X portion of that money that's allocated is still devoted to the literacy component. We can't deviate from that, but maybe that's a way that we can get this back on track so that we don't lose an opportunity to have any of these resources affect the key area that came from the group. I don't know if that's possible, but that
Well,
seems
and real quick, this is Mike. We're able to work with Susan and DOE to try to get to that route, right, Matt? At this point, as long as we're fulfilling what is written in epilogue.
Yeah,
Correct.
There's a week
the
left.
suggestion that was,
There's a week left.
I couldn't see who was talking just before you, but the suggestion that was just made is kind of in line with what Secretary Bunting said to me yesterday when I brought this up with her, which, you know, her suggestion was these responses are due on October 1st. Why don't we see what people propose? And, you know, and we can make a judgment then about whether it's, you know, we've gotten some good ones or whether it's something that we ought to reissue. And she's certainly aware of the underlying goal. I think she participated in, if not all, most of the educator work group meetings personally. Now there's some, you know, they have some limitations on what they're allowed to say about bid submissions during an RFP process. So, you know, the feedback that she's able to give might not be very specific. But that was, you know, her suggestion was, you know, these are due in a week, that the application allows for a great deal of flexibility for the schools that apply. And that, you know, it might be a good idea to wait for October 1st, see who applies, see what they say. And then, you know, and then go from there. And it certainly allows for, as long as there is some component that involves literacy, it allows for, you know, any number of things that go beyond that the school wants to propose. It just has to include that. It doesn't have to be limited to it.
Yeah, it seems like the specificity around the literacy piece, while I understand the rationale, of course, for why it happened, is adding a complication. And from the DOE's perspective, the way they explained, you know, of course, when we work with them to get, you know, we don't write the RFP for them, obviously, but working with them through their processes was, you know, they take into account their administrative capacities, some of their existing frameworks. And obviously, because some of their involvement in the group and their understanding of that Laurel Seaford comparison, as Fran points out, was that they're like, well, they were operating under this specific existing grant program. We can fit it into that. So that probably explains some of the rigidity, potentially. I think there might be some very prescriptive curriculum stuff in there that had come up as a potential problem also when we were having conversations about their final issuance of the RFP. But, you know, I think I agree. Well, I agree on a couple of points. I think if, you know, in reading the RFP, we don't feel that there is some specificity about the intent. If we get to the point of the need for it to be reissued, I don't see any reason why we couldn't include that language. Because since it does tend to mostly be boilerplate when we do these things. But I guess, you know, since we are a week away from any respondents, which quite frankly, DOE had expressed some concern about there being respondents. We made sure that this was very tailored to only the specific population of schools that we're concerned with through Reading. And there was some concern about whether or not the applications would be made to begin with, right, Matt?
Yes, that's, and again, it's based on just, you know, the timing that this is going out at the same time that the schools have gotten, you know, for them, a huge amount of discretionary professional development money through the CARES Act. So they are, you know, they've already made some professional development plans based on that. And there's, you know, the issue is, you know, people only have so many hours in the day, and how much, you know, it's kind of I guess it's a nice problem to have, because they've had the opposite problem in the past. But you know, that they may have money for more professional development than they can reasonably ask their staff and teachers to take.
So I suspect the response to the RFP may well align with the concerns that we have about, you know, the intent of the recommendations being truly reflected. And I would think that would give us a very clear opportunity to revisit how this moves forward. And they're
Yes.
aware of the concerns, right?
So if everyone's agreeable, then like post meeting, I'll email Susan with Noelle, and I will email Susan Bunting, and we'll copy you guys. I guess we'll let it ride, knowing that we can change it and not take any of what comes in, but it gives us an opportunity to review what comes in to see if anybody does understand the intent. And if not, we can kind of change the language a little bit to get back to the original intent, making sure, knowing that literacy needs to be a component of that due to the, tell me if I'm wrong, Tizzy, due to the epilogue language that
Correct.
was there with the joint finance. Okay.
In there, it's explicitly in there. Yeah. And so
Is
we're
that
balanced.
okay? Is that good with you, Noelle?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay. All right. Well, then we can move on to the other working groups then. I know Noelle's got to go back to teaching, so
Yes.
wanted to
No,
bring
I
some closure
appreciate
to it.
I appreciate you guys, you know, taking it seriously and bringing it to us. I think there is obviously a path to make this better, and you know, apologize for the disappointment that it got a bit off track, but I don't think we are too far out of the barn, you know, to make it work. And this is certainly something that we can speak to. We're all learning a lot about the RFP process this year, so you know, we'll use that to do better with the next steps.
So two of the
Thanks for giving us some time to talk it out. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
two of the three schools are in my district, and we do intend to apply, and we do intend to apply to the letter of the RFP that was put out.
Mhm.
I think, this is me, I think probably the best approach, if we would really want to change the intent of this, or if we want to go to the intent of this, which was explained, is to maybe pull that back, let
Mhm.
all the eligible schools know what the new framework is, and just do it right the first time, because
Yeah.
now you're in a situation where you've got, you know, two schools and probably a third already working on a grant that
Mhm.
it was a short, I want to step aside too and say, look, I'm the CFO of one of our largest districts. I have some of the most experience in the state, and that's not for ego's sake. That's to offer up, before you put this stuff out, if you'd like to ask me, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? I'd be very happy to give some time and help with that, because as, I don't know if it's Noelle, Tika, or someone else said, maybe it was Shelley, said, there are probably 9 other funding sources, 11 other funding sources that we can use for professional development or something like that. There may be only 3 or 4 that we can use for like a grow your own program, and those probably aren't enough to do it. And I could even tell you, look, in a district like mine, this is how much we could put toward it. And there's a lot of competing priorities, but you know, I'm here, so please use me. We're seeing a pattern of RFPs just coming out, and with a very short fuse and without much knowledge of them coming out. And I don't know if that's by design or just because of the way the communication works, but we got an email saying, hey, look, this RFP is out. It's been out for a few days already. You guys need to apply for it. And so that's not really, you know, and it's due at the end of this month. So.
Right.
Mm.
And I'd hate to see schools have their time wasted on an RFP that's not going to be fulfilled, and then expected to then apply for a revised one in a month. That sounds like it would
So So we're in agreement that we're gonna ask Susan to pull it then?
I,
Well, Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna see my superintendent this afternoon and I can tell him, hey, look, this is what I said in this committee. I don't know who the third school is, but they probably would feel the same way.
Mhm, mhm.
Okay, all right.
Well, that's a very, I mean, just, I mean, you know, I'm removing myself from this process to make it simpler, but just understand that that's a very different request that's very different than what she suggested. So, and, you know, they also say no. But, you know, that's with a week to go before the applications are due, asking them to send out a notice basically canceling it. You know, that's very different from what we were saying 10 minutes ago. So as long as people are aware of that, then, you know, that's fine, but that's a very different request.
So Matt, tell me your understanding of what we were saying 10 minutes ago. And that was to go ahead and see what's there. See, the other
Yeah.
approach that I would take then is go ahead and put in the applications and hope we get it, and then maybe apply for an amendment later on that maybe meets the intent of what we were talking about. But see, right now, looking at the RFP, I, as a school district, don't see anything about growing your own or teacher recruitment, retention, or anything in there. If
Okay,
that's-
and just to be clear, this RFP has nothing to do with growing your own. Those are two totally separate things.
Just
And
that piece.
yeah,
Okay.
there's a separate budget recommendation that has to do with grow our own that hasn't been addressed yet by DOE. So this was not meant to have anything to do with grow our own. There's two separate recommendations, and this is exclusively with respect to the professional development.
Okay.
Right.
And Susan, you know, what Susan's suggestion was these are due on October 1st. We might get some great applications that do exactly what we would want them to. We might not, but it's all happening in a week. So why not see what we get and then assess, you know, what to do at that point. And again, as I said, you know, she may be somewhat limited in terms of what she can tell us about the specifics of what they've gotten, because it's you know, there's bidding laws and they have to be careful about what they disclose. But, you know, she should, as I said, she's been personally pretty engaged in this process from the get-go. So she should at least be able to tell us, you know, these are applications that, you know, I think are going to be helpful with respect to teacher retention or not. But
Okay.
that's,
And I
But that-
totally
that-
get, yeah, she's got to go by what's in the, what was in the epilogue or the law that was passed. Absolutely. Just like you said before. I don't know that you're going to get wonderful, amazing, great applications, but you're going to get applications. I mean, this is the other problem with putting out this short fuse RFP in September is that it's September. And anybody who's been around schools knows September is not the time to be peeling people off to write RFPs.
Mhm.
But thanks again for listening and considering,
Yeah.
and thanks for the money too. I mean, I don't ever want you to think that, you know, we don't need or want resources, but
But I mean, we have a lot of folks on the call who put a lot of work into that. And so, you know, I feel like I'm hearing pretty clearly that we, you know, it was lost in translation, the primary intent here, and that's concerning. And, you know, I think it doesn't seem like there's a lot of queasiness over the idea of not having people submit these proposals for the wrong intent. And so I maybe it seems like a more extreme thing, but I feel like I'm hearing pretty clearly from everyone who's involved in putting forth this recommendation that we'd rather see it gotten right on the first try, and that would be of a benefit to people who are actually making applications. And so, you know, I think we should honor that. So it sounds like Mike deputized himself to make that call, or
Yeah,
I don't know if you need to-
I'm gonna email Susan after this and just have a dialogue about it. And if she pulls it, she pulls it. If she doesn't, she doesn't. And we'll figure it out as we go along to at least make sure the intent is within that, whether through Chuck's suggestion of an amendment or redoing it. So we'll see what she.
We'll find a
says.
path forward.
Yeah, to Matt's point, she doesn't have to do it. So we'll just have the
Mhm.
dialogue and see if that's the direction she wants to take after that discussion or not. But I'll make sure that we relay Chuck's comments and concerns too, because I think those are warranted considering 2 of those schools would be the ones applying. So.
Right. Well, thank you.
Thank
Thank you all. And, apologies again. And then just, not to open another can of worms, and Noel, we can certainly have an offline conversation too. My understanding with Grow Our Own was that we, the intention was to imply the funding that was dedicated through the budget to the existing components. So I think it was more of a path of least resistance there. It's certainly, we can talk about the accelerated certification opportunities, but maybe outside, have a specific conversation about the opportunities to do that, and whether or not, any of those funds are applicable to that. But for now, Noel's not on. Okay, I'm talking into the ether. So I will text Noel and have a conversation with her about that. Okay, all right, that was very necessary. So thank you everyone for participating in that. On some level, good problems to have that we were able to secure this funding and start generating these RFPs and RFAs. And, with all of the different hands in the pot and stages that things have to go through with public dollars, there'll be some bumps in the road, but the best we can do is be attentive to those and fix them where we can fix them. So thank you for doing exactly that we asked you to do. Settlement committee, Chuck, I don't know if Aaron's able to be on. I didn't see him.
Nope, Aaron couldn't make it today, but we did have a meeting, and it was just to review the settlement, where we are and what we expect to see this year. One of the big conversations was about the independent funding assessment, which isn't a this year thing or a next year thing. I think it might be 2 years off, but we believe that we expect to see something about it in the governor's recommended budget this year in order to have enough time to do it right. There was discussion on what is independent of Delaware, there's some clause in the settlement that says that the entity doing it must be an independent entity of the state, something like that. There was some conversation about what that meant. And, we as a committee, we're not in any position to determine what that is, but we had a philosophical discussion on that, because I think that there might be some potentially Delaware connected entities, depending on how you interpret that, that might be interested in doing the independent funding assessment. So just as, anybody who is either on this call or listening, who's involved in that process, just know that you need to be very clear about what that means, or else you might get, you might have somebody in a gray area that you'll have to figure out. So, and that's it. We got another meeting coming up at some point, but we'll be talking about the funding assessment and the cake versus icing as we go on.
Great. Always a good one. All right, cool. So we'll look forward to that update being given next week. Social determinants, Ray, I see you. I don't know if Jeff's here or not today, but I believe you did successfully have the meeting.
Matt, can you report? I had a conflict with the Wilmington Center.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, it was a relatively short meeting, and the most of the discussion was about monitoring going forward some of the programs that are going to be put in place as a result of the other RFPs that are out. And there was also some discussion about turning attention going forward to some of the children at the middle and particularly high school levels, because most of the recommendations to date have been focused on younger students in elementary school. So it was a much more general discussion than we've had at some of the prior meetings.
Okay. Any questions? All right. And then we just sort of wanted to put it on our agenda, and I'm not sure that, I don't believe we have Nambi or Eugene on the call, but of course the Funding and Governance Committee, as we all know, is being retired. And there was some questions as to whether or not, oh, sorry.
Nambi is on.
Oh, he is on.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't see everyone. Is he available?
Yeah,
looks
I
like-
am.
Oh, hey, sorry, Namdi, I couldn't see you.
No problem. I'm double dipping too. So
Yes, yes.
another meeting going on right there. So no, but
Yeah.
just quick update right where you were headed, just about trying to reconstitute the group. So started some meetings, haven't met directly with Eugene yet, but trying due to his new position, was seeking to get another co-chair for it and also to focus a bit more on the governance aspect of it. So we're trying to, again, reconstitute another group. We have some commitments from some members of city council to join as well as our county councilman to join. And one of our city state reps has agreed to participate on this new body. So we're hoping to have it next month, a group configured and hopefully be willing to ready to start meeting. And also have started trying to just have conversations about our true goals, working along, again, also including the city administration.
Okay, well, that's good. I mean, so will you be able to offer sort of an epilogue for funding and governance and a little, preview of sort of where things stand, that there's an announcement to come? Would you feel comfortable doing that
absolutely.
at next week's meeting? You'll be there?
Sure.
Okay, so then we'll make sure it's on the agenda as well as one of the work group updates.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
You certainly may.
So you're not disbanding the group, you're just kind of adding some new members and reorg. So if you already are on that work group, are you still on that work group?
It may be. I think there's going to be a shift. So it may not be all of the same membership. We're trying to make it, some members will, I guess, still be there. But what we're trying to do is have a little bit more representation from Wilmington specific groups and representatives, in particular elected members.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding of it is more of a sunset of the existing funding and governance group. So I think from my perspective, that's the most accurate way to characterize it. And then this redistricting group is essentially a new work group. So in the sense that there's a transition, it's because we're sunsetting one group and creating a new one, which is the project you're describing and working on, correct? So if anyone has any particular questions or thoughts or, desires to inform that, Representative Chicocha would be the person to speak to.
I don't have any more questions. I was on the original group and I would like to stay on it.
All right, maybe you guys can connect.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other questions or thoughts on work group updates? I think we're gonna have some pretty interesting updates as rubber meets the road in different ways for different work groups. So next week should be, I think we'll get some feedback from the broad membership of the work group. So just be prepared to field those questions. Okay. And Haley, do you want to speak to a couple of these items, the newsletter, anything that you need from us?
Sure. We're working on putting together the newsletter. It's going to go out the morning of the 30th to promote the attendance at the meeting on the 30th. And we like to have a community news section. So if anyone is able to send events that are going on that are related to education equity, please send them to me or Alexis, just so we can reflect them and, just promote all the good stuff that's going on. And I know Tizzy forwarded me a few things from Dawn. So
yeah, Dawn's a great source of stuff. And I thought maybe the timing worked with the newsletter for that one. It was equity training. Okay. And
the second one was talking about the DETV, and that was just a follow-up conversation from our last work group meeting. I don't have too much information. I think Ray had originally brought it up, so if people wanted to continue that conversation, we can do that.
About DETV?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's right. That was something that came up in our last meeting. It's a good one. I don't know if we've made any connection there. Ray, is that something you wanted to speak to, or did you have a different announcement?
I have a different announcement, but
Okay.
If you would like for me to be a liaison, I wasn't sure if there was an interest in at least having a conversation with the representations from TV. If you're interested in considering that platform, I'd be happy to make the connections with the appropriate people on both the Reading Consortium side and the DETV side. Because there is a cost associated with it, except for the news. So if you just want to do a news segment, that there's no cost associated with that. But if you want your own program, monthly or quarterly or something like that, that's a little different conversation.
Right, okay. Yeah, maybe we should just gather that information about the distinction and what that might look like. So if you're volunteering to be the liaison, I think we would all welcome that. And I'm certainly interested. Does anyone have any objections to exploring some type of time on DETV? Okay, well, let's just explore what that would involve before we make any official decisions. All right. So Ray, did you want to make your announcement apart from that?
Yes, it's an informational sharing announcement. The National Coalition of 100 Black Women, the Delaware Health and Human Services Division of Public Health, and the Center for Research and Policy at the University of Delaware, and UD Healthy Partnerships. We've been conducting a study over the last 2 years of the lived conditions of Black girls in the state of Delaware. There are two different points of methodology: focus groups and online survey. Our focus group outcomes are ready, soon to be released. And I wanted to share that you all will get an invitation to a public release. I am urging our group to give a preliminary release opportunity to the Reading Consortium and to school districts and school boards, in as much as when the sections of the focus group that ask Black girls about their experiences in schools are profound. And, I think it would be good for you to get that information before it goes public.
Okay. And when does that go public, Ray? Again?
Goes public the first week in November, which is or November 9th, which is not far from now.
No, not at all.
And the study will be released in a series of briefs that are themed around physical safety, nutrition, self-image, racism, and resilience or weathering. Those are the focus group themes. And then the online survey will be the last brief. The online survey results will be the last brief to be released.
Okay. Well, I look forward to seeing the briefs personally, and hopefully maybe we can get a little preview, and maybe after the fact of it becoming public, maybe that's something that Social Determinants wants to take a look at. It seems like that would be a fit. Okay. Any other announcements or questions? We covered a good bit, covered some important stuff today. And next week we'll get to put it all on display. So just let us know if you have any other questions or concerns leading into sort of the presentation of where things stand next week. And do we have any members of the public in the room? I made it clear I couldn't really see everybody in the list who would like to comment. If so, now's the time to raise your hand or make yourself known. And if not,
we do have one member of the public I'm seeing, but I don't know if he wants to make a comment.
Is that Mr. Davis?
Yep.
Yep. Oh, we connected last week or last meeting about some opportunities. He's affiliated with the NAACP in Newark. So we're definitely going to be having a conversation moving forward. You're of course welcome still on to comment, but I think you might have just, oh no, there you are. Okay. Yes, would you like to say a few words about your organization?
I chair the Educational Committee for the NAACP, the Newark branch of the NAACP. And I've just been, as I mentioned to you, one of the things that Dan Rich shared with us is to just follow the Reading Consortium and see how we can help and vice versa. So I appreciate you getting back to me and seeing if we can set something up.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you joining us every time we meet. It's great to see you there, and I look forward to seeing what we can do together.
Thank you.
Well, okay, then if there's nothing further, I'm going to adjourn us for now, and we'll see everybody in the public meeting next Thursday evening. We'll have a couple new members and a lot of interesting things to talk about. So enjoy the weekend and see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.